Your players are about to take on the roles of scout investigators in Call of Cthulhu Campfire Tales Scouts Against Cthulhu from Chaosium Inc. Inside this volume, you're going to find rules for creating these scout characters, as well as new skills to imbibe them with, and 4 scenarios which can be utilized standalone or together as a campaign. Should you and your players be excited to begin earning your merit badges in terror? Well, you'll find out because I'll be sharing my review of Call of Cthulhu Campfire Tales Scouts Against Cthulhu right after this. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Today, I am going to be sharing my review of Call of Cthulhu Campfire Tales Scouts Against Cthulhu from Chaosium Inc. This is written by Joshua Hoyt, Matt Ryan, and Paul Fricker. The 180-page hardcover with PDF is available now. Carries an MSRP of $42.99. If you want to grab just the PDF alone, you can do so over at DriveThruRPG for $21.99. Having said all that, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got Call of Cthulhu Campfire Tales Scouts Against Cthulhu. And from here on out, I am going to be referring to this as Campfire Tales because the full title just is a bit of a mouthful. So let's start off with a few things. First of all, my friends over at Chaosium Inc. were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the book, but I do want to give you a really good feel for what you're going to find inside. Then lastly, more than half of this volume is devoted to 4 scenarios. So if you are a player and your keeper has picked up Campfire Tales, maybe they just haven't started running it yet. Maybe they're talking about picking this up. Keep in mind, there are some spoilers ahead. They are not major spoilers, but they are spoilers nonetheless. So you're being warned right up front. Now, of course, if your keeper has been kicking around picking up Campfire Tales, let them know about this review. That way they can approach this and make a far more informed buying decision. First thing we'll do is take a peek at the credits page. A lot of folks work very hard to bring this to life. So let's give credit where credit is due. Campfire Tales is a supplement for the Call of Cthulhu horror role-playing game from Chaosium Inc. I have been running the game since it came out in 1981. This is my go-to horror role-playing game. I am a huge fan of nearly all things Call of Cthulhu. And with Campfire Tales Scouts Against Cthulhu, you are looking at the introduction of scout investigators. So these are kids ranging in age from 11 to 18 who will embark on Call of Cthulhu adventures. So I know some people have talked about how this is kind of a kids on bikes sort of supplement for Call of Cthulhu. There are some elements of that, but I would say this is not necessarily a kids on bikes sort of genre. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes. We're going to kick off with some information about the history of scouting. I know some folks out there would be very surprised to find out the scouting movement actually began in England, not here in the US. I actually knew that. I was never a scout. My brother was. I was not. Just wasn't necessarily my bag. And my brother really wasn't a scout for very long. I think my parents decided that there was a little too much cost involved for what my brother was getting out of it. Anywho, so we're going to start off with some information about creating our scout investigators. So we, of course, have a completely different way of going about generating their attributes. Of course, they're children, so most of those attributes are going to be lower than the adult Call of Cthulhu characters. We have some differences as well. So we do not have sanity, we have cool. So it is entirely possible for a player character to lose his or her cool and something bad happens due to that, but there is no temporary insanity or anything like that going on. We've got a trio of new skills, but I mean, they're pretty minor. One is ride bicycle, and then we've got reassure, which is kind of to help calm down a player character who has lost their cool, who's distressed. Some of the big changes here that we've got these scout badges, and then we have the ranks of scouts. So the scout badges will actually provide a bonus to a particular skill based on a character earning that badge. And then it also gives them a special ability to add an advantage die to one roll in an adventure. Pretty cool. I thought that's pretty interesting. We also have the different ranks of scouting, which will provide for a one-time benefit per adventure. So like I said, there's some tweaks here. This isn't simply, okay, well, let's just use all the Call of Cthulhu rules, but we're going to kind of tweak the attributes because they're children. No, combat's different as well because these are sometimes small kids. So how are small kids going to be able to take on a grown adult? Well, we get these fighting maneuvers. So a player can decide to take their action in combat and essentially donate it to another player to help improve the odds of what they're looking to do. So I will point out that with Campfire Tales, with the combat, you are looking at things being far more narrative than just straight out gunfights and things like that. So I thought that was another interesting wrinkle. Now, over half the book is devoted to these 4 scenarios, some adventure nuggets as well. We've got some pre-generated characters, some new spells, and so forth. Now, the first adventure, you're looking at about a single session in length, kind of introduce the players to the concept of playing as scouts. And something I also like about these adventures is there is some focus on scouting in each of these. The player characters have to be doing something in the adventure that scouts would have been doing. So this is going to take place starting in 1918. There's a scrap drive going on with the player characters squad. It's like their troop. They're actually competing against the Stumbling Moose squad, who are kind of their friendly, maybe not so friendly rivals as far as the scouting goes. So they're trying to win a contest for who's going to collect the most scrap. So things like that are going on in each of the adventures. And it does provide for a nice feel that the player characters are scouts. And more importantly, it also provides a lot of options for fun role playing. Now, we also have a new location that's introduced to the world of Call of Cthulhu. It is the town of Westhaven. Now, there are some options here to move the action to Arkham if you'd like. Personally, I like the fact that we've got a new locale, a new town that you can use as far as a base of operations. We've got a variety of NPCs that are provided for us as well. Each of the adventures has a nice, cool, kind of filmatic feel to them. You can kind of pick up on certain influences from like old horror movies, even things like old Little Rascals shorts kind of pop up here and there in each of these adventures. I like that a ton. Now, as far as this being a kids on bikes sort of supplement, okay, sure, yes, the players are taking on the roles of children. They are all scouts, though. There are no adult player characters in Campfire Tales. It is strictly frowned upon because it'll ruin the balance of the party. Because, of course, if you have an adult character and then everyone else is playing a kid, the adult character is going to get the focus because they are the adult. So I like that fact. Now, that's kind of a tenet of all kids on bikes sort of games. Where I don't think this is kids on bikes is the mature nature of the adventures. So a lot of times in a kids on bikes sort of role playing game, it is really not allowed to have the player characters die. So it's either dissuaded for game masters to do that, or it is forbidden in the rules, such as Tales from the Loop. Here, that's not the case. Now, of course, this is certainly not as lethal as a standard Call of Cthulhu campaign, at least for the player characters, it isn't. But there still is that threat of bodily harm and death that the player characters face. I love that because, in my opinion, you can't have a horror role playing game if the player characters can't take a dirt nap. You just can't. Where is the tension then? If you know the player characters are always going to survive. So even though they are children, it is a possibility. Now, is it going to happen a lot? Probably not. I mean, there are some rule tweaks to make the kids far sturdier, maybe in some ways, than a traditional Call of Cthulhu adventure. But still, I do like the fact that, you know, they could meet grisly ends. That's something else, I think, with these adventures that takes it out of the realm of traditional kids on bikes. There are some pretty grisly things going on in these adventures. And there are NPCs that the player characters are going to be pretty tight with, who are destined to meet their ends, and sometimes in very bloody ways. So we've got the 4 adventures. We're going to start off with a short 1 session or so adventure to kind of introduce the players to the concept of these scout investigators. The second adventure, about the same, I would say probably 1 session. The third, I could see a couple of sessions. And then the fourth, multiple sessions. It is a fairly lengthy adventure. So the investigators are going to learn that there are some tendrils of darkness that have spread throughout their town. There is a cult at work in their town, and most people are completely unaware of it. And the scouts are going to learn about it, and maybe the master plan of the leader of the cult. I like the adventures quite a lot, and they do have a nice change of pace from traditional Call of Cthulhu adventures. But here's the final adventure. As you'll see, there's quite a bit of page count devoted to this. Very nicely done. I got to be honest, this is another campaign where, as a player, I think I would have a lot of fun. So let's wrap up. Let's talk about the production quality. Paper stock, excellent. Really nice paper stock here. As far as the binding, it is a stitched binding. This book is going to hold up. The artwork throughout, most of it is solid. Some of it's fairly mundane. Kind of surprised by that. Some of it is just kids doing kid stuff. Yeah, I understand why it's there, but I think there's a little too much artwork of nothing really going on, just kind of static scenes. It's not a big deal, but I do want to point that out. All right. So we're going to get some new spells, get glossary of scouting terms, we get some adventure nuggets to use around Westhaven as well. So that is a peek inside Call of Cthulhu Campfire Tales Scouts Against Cthulhu from Chaosium Inc. Let's swing on over to the other camera. I'm going to share some final thoughts as well as my review score. Gotta say, I was mightily impressed by Campfire Tales. Honestly, I was a little leery going in. So I was kind of curious, is this just going to be Call of Cthulhu Light, or is it going to be Call of Cthulhu just tweaked for the characters to be kids, but it's still going to be Call of Cthulhu? No, it's actually kind of its own thing. There are some mechanical changes to Call of Cthulhu that I think suit this style of play, this sort of story, very, very nicely. I thought that was very cool. I am impressed by what Chaosium Inc. has pulled off, because they could have easily just made some tweaks to how you create the attributes and been like, okay, there you go. Those are the kids. So they've got lower scores. But no, that is not the case here. We've got the various different badges that they can earn that give them not only a bonus to the skill, but a bonus that they can utilize once per adventure. We got the different ranks of scouting. We've got an adversity mechanic that is added to the proceedings, because the kids as scouts spend a lot of time out in the wilderness. So they're exposed to the elements and hunger and things of that sort. So we've got that as a new mechanic that can lead to the kids being distressed, which can cause negative modifiers to what they're trying to achieve. So there's a lot going on mechanically that's a little bit different. We don't have the sanity rules anymore. We've got the cool, which is going to lighten the load on keepers as well as players. So I thought that was very nicely incorporated into the rules section. As far as the adventures, I like the campaign quite a bit. Although I should point out, and I'm kind of surprised by this, the title is Scouts Against Cthulhu. We really don't have any mythos involvement here. Now, yes, there's the occult, there's supernatural. I might go a little mythos in the final scenario, maybe. But I'm kind of surprised that it's Scouts Against Cthulhu. That's why I think that there is a possibility that this is going to be the first of other titles in a Campfire Tales line. And honestly, I would love to see that, because I think the campaign itself should be a lot of fun for players and keepers alike. And I do like the tweaks mechanically to Call of Cthulhu to make Campfire Tales kind of its own thing. Really dig that quite a bit. I would probably recommend taking, as odd as these influences might be, take a peek at some of the old Little Rascals shorts, sprinkle in some of the opening scenes of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, as well as the film Super 8. And I think that's the sort of vibe you're going to get for Campfire Tales. Now, funny enough, Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew are mentioned early on in the introduction. Even Where Are You, Scooby-Doo is mentioned. Funny enough, I don't really see that Campfire Tales is going to share a lot of genre DNA, I guess, with those, because those tend to be, oh, it's a mystery. Ooh, it's something spooky. Not usually Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, but it's always just some mundane thing going on. That's certainly not the case here. And something else I really like is, even though it's more unlikely for the scout investigators to meet their doom, that's not the case with a lot of the NPCs that they are very well tied in with in the campaign. So I like that as well, that this is not pulling any punches simply because the player characters are youthful scouts. So all in all, I am very, very impressed by Campfire Tales. So, on a scale of 0 to 10, I give Call of Cthulhu Campfire Tales Scouts Against Cthulhu a 9 out of 10. All right, that is it for this time out. If you enjoy the Gaming Gang and would like to support the outlet, you can do so in a few ways. First, by utilizing our affiliate links to the One Bookshelf sites, such as DriveThruRPG. And to do so, just visit thegaminggang.com, click on one of our banner ads. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a 5% commission on most of those sales. And all those commissions really do add up and help keep thegaminggang.com around. You can also make a one-time donation by way of PayPal and become a monthly member of our Patreon. You'll find all of that down in the show notes. Also in the show notes, you'll find an invite link to our Discord server. Absolutely free to sign up. So be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. When you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are never going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. If you like the video, by all means, give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. And if you ring the bell, be sure to select all notifications, because it will not only let you know when I share videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.